Hey everyone, and happy hump day. It's your host at ATL. Trying something new today. We are going to do a first look here live on YouTube. Just going to go through each game by game on the main slate, kind of give some first thoughts, and just kind of, probably knock it out in about 30 minutes here and just kind of go game by game, give you my first thoughts on every game. I'll take some questions if anyone has anything. And from there, let's just kind of hop in. So I've got 1 week seasons page pulled up, which is where I contribute. And we'll just kind of go game by game. First game here is the Vikings and Browns. That is a European game, not on the early slate. So the first game will be the Raiders and the Colts. So to me, this kind of feels like a spot where the field's going to want to play the Colts, especially Jonathan Taylor. As you see, they've got a team total of 27.5. However, the Raiders have been really well above average against the run this year. Jonathan Taylor's price is up to 8,000. So, JT's boxes, he's going to check a lot of boxes for folks this week. But initially to me, like, he doesn't really stand out. I think Daniel Jones is also likely to garner some interest. However, his fantasy production's been bolstered by his 3 rushing touchdowns in weeks 1 and 2. So just for reference, like in the previous 6 seasons, which is all of Daniel Jones's career, he's only exceeded 2 rushing touchdowns in a season once back in 2022. So at 5,800, it feels unlikely that he puts up a score that you just can't win without, as Las Vegas has already held 4 mobile quarterbacks in Drake May, Justin Herbert, Marcus Mariota, and Caleb Williams, all to 21.3 or less fantasy points. So I feel like it's not a spot where Daniel Jones is going to crush you for not playing him this week. Although through the air, Tylan Warren is averaging like 13 fantasy points a game, hasn't scored a touchdown yet, despite the fact that he leads the team in red zone targets. So at 4,700, he's probably my favorite price-considered Colt. Then on the other side of the ball, Ashton Genty exploded last week, 150-plus yards, 3 touchdowns. However, the Colts present the most difficult matchup he's faced. He's also now without his left guard or left tackle. So going to be running behind a little bit of a different offensive line. His price is up to 6,700. So I don't know that he stands out to me either. I think that if I was playing a Raider, it's probably Brock Bowers or Trey Tucker. I think this game is going to be super popular just because of that 48-point game total, but it's just not one that stands out to me initially. So the next game we've got is the Giants visiting the Saints. So while neither team's been like particularly strong on offense, the Giants' injuries here may make for some of their pieces to be more interesting in this matchup as the week progresses. Maybe we get some more news. Jackson Dart got his first NFL start last week, led the Giants to that 21-18 victory over the Chargers. However, with his top weapon now in Malik Neighbors done for the year, it's kind of hard to get excited about Dart here. He had a lot of designed runs last week. And we'll kind of have to see how that progresses. I think the Saints have been better outside of that one game in Seattle where they really didn't show up. The other 3 games, they've been, I think, a lot better than the field will likely give them credit for. On the ground, like Tyrone Tracy, still dealing with that injury, and his absence last week led Cam Scadaboo to see 27 touches. So if Tracy were to miss again, I may have some interest in Scadaboo here as a bet on volume. On the other side of the ball, Alvin Kamara saw his price drop to 5,900. And while Kendre Miller saw, an increased workload last week, Kamara still had 19 touches, which he's done in all but 1 game this year. So he's still kind of their workhorse back, even though Miller is seeing more touches. Kamara would still be my preference there. Through the air, Chris Olave continuing to see a ton of targets. I think he's got 43 on the year, which is second in the NFL, only behind Puka Nacua. So the Giants have given up solid fantasy scores to every opposing, top weapon on every opposing team this year. So at 5,200, Olave is interesting. Rashid Shaheed also interesting as well. I'm just not sure on the other side of the ball that any Giants pass catcher is going to see enough volume to really get excited about. I think this game could have some fantasy goodness. We'll just kind of have to see how that plays out and what the field is doing in terms of expected ownership. Next game we've got is the Cowboys at the Jets. I think this is a game that is not going to be sneaky to anybody, going to garner a good bit of ownership. Cowboys defense has been anything but intimidating this year. They're allowing an average of 33 points a game against. And opposing quarterbacks this season, which they faced Jalen Hurts, Russell Wilson, Caleb Williams, and Jordan Love, all scored more than 24 fantasy points against Dallas, with that group combining to average over 30 fantasy points a game. So I think at just 5,600, Justin Fields is definitely going to be popular this week. The Jet side of the ball in general is particularly appealing, as Braylon Allen suffered that MCL sprain, which should bolster Breece Hall's workload, basically guaranteeing that he's going to see 20 touches. He'll also probably get the goal line work with Allen gone. So passing game for the Jets is almost entirely Garrett Wilson. He's got 38 targets on the year, and that's 22 more than their number 2 option, which is rookie tight end Mason Taylor. So I think that if you want to bet on the Jets, it's really easy to do so because their workload is so concentrated between Fields, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson. I think you could even include Mason Taylor into those stacks. He's a super cheap tight end option. On the other side of the ball, like this, matchup stands out for Dallas a little bit too. Like their offense has gotten even more condensed with the CeeDee Lamb injury. I think if I'm choosing between Fields and Dak, I think I prefer Justin Fields, but both George Pickens and Jake Ferguson are interesting pass catching options in this game. On the ground, Javonte Williams really stands out to me here as the Jets. They've allowed, I think, opposing RB1s to top 99 total yards in 3 straight games to, James Cook, Bucky Irvin, and Devon A. Chan. So, Javonte Williams coming in with 15 or more touches in every game this season. He's also got multiple games of 23 or more touches, so he's heavily involved. I think this is a strong option this week for DFS. He is a little bit more expensive in the 6Ks, but a solid bet for volume. I think that 15 to 20 touches is his likeliest range of outcomes. So a spot that I'll be considering when I'm building my lineups here. Next game we've got is Denver at Philadelphia. I think despite even his best performance of the year on Monday night, like Bo Nix doesn't stand out to me here on the road against the Eagles. Like Philadelphia has kept Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, Matt Stafford, and Baker Mayfield all under 20 fantasy points this season. So I don't know that I'm going to run to Nix here. Broncos have also been above average, on defense, kind of making this matchup for Jalen Hurts one that doesn't stand out. However, I think if I'm picking a play from this game, it's probably Saquon Barkley. He's seen 22 or more touches in every week. This feels like a better spot than the field's going to give it credit for Barkley to post that bounce back performance. He's price is down to 7,500. It's the cheapest he's been all year. And both Jonathan Taylor and Amarian Hampton accounted for over 125 yards and a touchdown against this Broncos D. So I could certainly see a game line like that for Barkley. And then through the air, I think the matchup does stand out a good bit here for the Broncos wide receivers, specifically Cortland Sutton. 3 of the 4 opposing wide receiver ones have posted really strong games against the Eagles this season. CeeDee Lamb went for 110 yards. Puka Nacua went for 112 yards. And Emeka Egbuka went for 101 with a touchdown without Mike Evans last week. So I feel like that's a spot where I don't mind Troy Franklin. I don't mind Cortland Sutton, even at their prices. So next game we've got here is Miami at the Bucks. So I think initially off the hop at 4,700, Bryce Young stands out as the Dolphins have given up 31 or more points in 3 out of the 4 games. They're now traveling to Carolina on a short week. Daniel Jones, Drake May, Josh Allen all accounted for 3 touchdowns against Miami, while Justin Fields had over 300 total yards and 2 touchdowns himself. So I think a solid spot for Bryce Young. Rookie wide receiver Ted McMillan has 8 or more targets in every game. He'd be my favorite stacking partner. I think if you wanted to consider the ground game, the Dolphins have allowed strong games to every opposing RB1 they faced this year. 111 yards to Breece Hall, 118 yards to James Cook, 142 yards to Ramondre Stevenson, 98 yards to Jonathan Taylor. So I think at 5,800, 3 or more receptions in every game. Chuba Hubbard stands out. He missed practice today, I think, with a calf injury. So that's kind of a situation to monitor if he's a full go. Obviously, I do like him as well. On the Miami side of the ball, Tyreek Hill suffered that season-ending injury on Monday night, kind of leaving their already concentrated offense to be even more condensed. The whole offense is going to flow through Devon Achane. I think he'll continue to see 20 touches. He's going to be significantly involved in the pass game as well. And I'm going to expect Jalen Waddle here to see probably 8 to 10 targets every single week without Tyreek Hill. So I think both Achane and Waddle are strong bets for volume if you're building around this game. Wouldn't mind either or both as a bring back if you're going to build around Bryce Young. So the next game, we've got the Texans visiting the Ravens. Ravens have faced 3 competent offenses this season, the Bills, the Lions, and the Chiefs. They allowed 37 or more points to all 3. While Josh Allen went for 424 yards, Patrick Mahomes 275 total yards. They both accounted for 4 touchdowns. So I think this is a matchup where CJ Stroud could be sneaky at 5,200. Lamar Jackson's going to miss the game with a hamstring injury, basically leaving Cooper Rush as the starter. He's priced all the way down at 4,300, but this is a tough spot. Houston's only allowed 51 total points all season, so an average of less than 13 a game. So not really a spot I'm running to grab Cooper Rush. I think there are better options at quarterback this week. On the ground, I think running backs have had moderate success against the Texans, but Henry doesn't stand out even without Lamar, as he's gone 3 straight games with 13 or fewer touches. So until they start prioritizing getting him the ball, I don't know that that's a spot I'd want to pay $7,000 for. Other side of the ball, Woody Marks has seen his usage grow every week. He outsnapped, he outproduced Nick Chubb last week, accounting for, I think, 119, 120 total yards and 2 touchdowns. So at 5,200, he's more intriguing to me than Derrick Henry, but neither certainly like a slam dunk spot. Through the air, I think this is interesting for Nico Collins. His price is down to 6,800, and he continues to kind of be the focal point of that pass offense. On the other side of the ball, I don't know that any Raven kind of catches my eye, as only Puka Nacua, who has kind of been the best wide receiver this year. No other pass catcher has surpassed 12.9 fantasy points against Houston. So I think if I'm going to consider paying down, Houston defense is intriguing to me. I think they're just 2,400. So if we move to the afternoon, the late slate here, first game is the Titans at the Cards. I think despite the fact that both Kenneth Walker and Christian McCaffrey surpassed 110 total yards against the Cardinals, it's really hard for me to get excited about any Titan, and that includes Tony Pollard. They're probably a team I'm just going to completely avoid after that shutout last week. On the other side of the ball, this would be a solid spot for James Conner or Trey Benson, but if you didn't see, both are out, basically leaving what will likely be a split backfield between Amari DeMarcado and Michael Carter. I think Carter's likely going to operate as the goal line back. I think he'll probably be lower owned. He's the min price at 4K, but it's really hard to kind of get excited about that uncertainty. I think through the air is probably where I would lean if picking a spot from this game. I do like Trey McBride, continues to be focal point of the pass game. He's got 35 targets this year. He's leading the team in red zone targets as well. And at 5,800, he presents a solid matchup once again at that onesie tight end position. So probably a spot that I'll consider. I think I'll be probably over the field on McBride this week. Next game we have is the Bucks visiting the Hawks, the Seahawks here. Sam Darnold, he's cheap. He's got that green matchup with like a really solid matchup on DK, but he doesn't stand out to me here. The Bucks have that reputation of being a pass funnel defense, although they limited CJ Stroud, Tyrod Taylor, and Jalen Hurts all to 207 or less passing yards this season. And they've also absolutely stifled every opponent's run game as well. Holding Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, and Nick Chubb and Woody Marks to all 43 rushing yards or less. So really not a spot I'm jumping to play Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet. Their prices aren't super cheap, and this matchup is super tough. Through the air, JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba has been really a workhorse for Seattle, seeing a ton of targets, but Tampa's done a really good job of limiting big games against them this year to opposing wide receivers. You look at Drake London, who saw 15 targets. Garrett Wilson saw 13 targets. So opposing wide receiver ones have gotten peppered because they've had no success running the ball, but they've really not had big games. Just last week, I think they held A.J. Brown to just 7 total yards on 9 targets. So not really a spot I'm really targeting anyone in this game. On the Tampa Bay side of the ball, I would say Chris Godwin at 5,900 could be appealing as an MME play. Did see 10 targets last week, making his season debut. So I think that's a spot that I think will probably go overlooked by the field because the box score, he only had 3 receptions, but he was heavily involved coming off of basically missing almost a full season. So I'd expect him to continue to be a focal point in the Tampa Bay offense. Next game, we've got Detroit visiting Cincinnati. Honestly, the Bengals have looked completely incompetent the past 2 games without Joe Burrow. Now they're facing one of the league's best offenses in the Lions. Lions kind of present a league average run defense. However, Chase Brown hasn't been able to get anything going for the Bengals. I think he's yet to top 50 rushing yards this season, despite double-digit attempts in every single game. So at 6,100, he's borderline unplayable, in my opinion. I think, honestly, you could say the same for Bengals quarterback Jake Browning. He's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns in his 2 starts this year. He hasn't even accounted for 150 total yards during either start. So probably a spot I'm going to mainly avoid all the Bengals. Jamar Chase, honestly, physically upset last season, but he'd kind of be a pure bet on talent as his price is at 7,800. To me, that's just so steep for a wide receiver who's only hit double-digit fantasy points once all season. Albeit it was a 39-point performance back in week 2. But at 7,800, I feel like you're really looking for an outlier performance. I do expect Cincinnati to be trailing in this game most of the game. So, I guess Chase would be in play if you really wanted to bet on his talent at will likely be really low ownership. However, the Detroit side of the ball is so much more interesting. The challenge, however, with the Lions is they spread the ball out. Their key skill position players are expensive. So I think despite that, I think you can make a case for Lions overstacks this week. We've seen them keep the pedal down in blowouts, and I'm not sure the Bengals D will present much of a challenge. The run game really stands out to me here with both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You look at what opponents have done against the Bengals. Bashal Tutin, Travis Etienne, Jordan Mason, RJ Harvey, all exceeded 74 yards with a touchdown against the Bengals. And then you've got more backs with Dylan Sampson and J.K. Dobbins, both surpassing 93 total yards. So you've seen they've only played 4 games, but 6 running backs have had strong success in terms of yardage against the Bengals. I think Gibbs is going to be significantly higher owned between him and Montgomery, but at 5,200, I think David Montgomery is also quite appealing here. So I think I'll have a good bit of exposure to Lions this week. And then the last game we've got here is Washington visiting the Chargers. To me, it feels like a really solid bounce back spot for Justin Herbert. a week after the Chargers suffered their first loss of the season. Commanders have allowed games of 289 or more passing yards with multiple touchdowns to Jordan Love, Geno Smith, and Michael Penix the past 3 weeks. And I would argue Justin Herbert is as good, if not better, than all three of those quarterbacks. So it's a spot that kind of stands out to me. Environment also really strong for Chargers running back Omarion Hampton. A week after Bijan Robinson went for 181 total yards on just 21 touches. So with the Najee injury, Hampton is seeing 17 or more touches in 3 out of 4 games this season. And I just kind of see that as kind of the floor for him. Through the air, Quentin Johnson continuing to look like that first-round talent after a disappointing rookie season. He's leading the team in targets, yards, and touchdowns. So at 5,700, he's probably my favorite stacking partner with Justin Herbert. And then I think if you wanted to get sneaky, you could consider rookie tight end Oronde Gadsden. He's at 2,700, probably a pure punt at the tight end position, but the coaching staff has said that they want to get him more involved. Other side of the ball, like Jaden Daniels' status is up in the air. He may play, he may not play. I don't know that even if he does play, that any commander really stands out to me in this matchup. I think Deebo Samuel maybe would be the most interesting, but again, his price is in the 6Ks, and I feel like it's really unlikely that he gives you that 25 to 30 point score where he hurts you for not rostering him at that salary. And then if we jump into kind of the defenses, kind of first pass for me of the defenses that stuck out would be the Lions, the Colts, the Chargers. I do like the Seahawks at home. I like the Saints at home if you're completely punting. I think they're like down at basically the minimum on DraftKings. And then I don't mind the Houston Texans as well. So I would say that probably does it for me this week in terms of a first look. We'll see if this gets any traction, and maybe we'll do it again next week. But I hope to see you and your OWS avatar atop a leaderboard this weekend. Thanks for tuning in.